All right, everyone, you made it to the Q&A. Oh man, I have to say that Curtis and I are having a ball and a right blast putting these teachings together. It's again revisiting what you think you know, right, and just finding these little gems along the way, deepening the understanding. It's been great, and it's actually been really helpful for Curtis and I regarding what we're going to give at Sukkot. So it's been really weird. We're having two discussions simultaneously, but it's all connected. It's all connected. Yeah.
It's and true. I know there'll be lots of discussion and questions going on, and we can't get to everything. But just know as we go through the series to its conclusion, which takes us right through to Sukkot, and then there'll be Sukkot itself, a lot of questions or things you might be asking or wondering will be answered in that. It is impossible for us to take one part of this, and even though we'll give 6 parts of this really to Sukkot, just remember how difficult it is there's so many things where we have to put the discipline in to make the point as we're doing this lamp under our feet. If we just suddenly make it a big spotlight and go all over the place, it literally is a lamp under our feet, and we're building the picture up. And some of the questions you might have, or thoughts or statements and whatnot, don't worry. We'll start to cover these things in deeper understanding as we progress and go through to this and take us right through to Sukkot. So if your question's not quite answered today or whatever else it is, just keep going, and you might find that these things come into play. That's all. Just to encourage you. So, because if not, we'll just be having one teaching that's, 3 days long, and we're all going to be pretty tired here.
Yeah, and people might start falling out the windows and dying, and we don't want that.
Yeah. But we do appreciate the quality of the questions and the things that are in there. But there's a lot. There's just a lot that we have to consider with such the magnitude of what this is, because Paul called it a great mystery. Mm. And if he took being a master of the Torah and the prophets, then a Damascus Road experience, and then having to read Yuchat for, these 3 years to start to understand these matters, it's okay that we're learning too along the way and having to readdress some things and understand things and all that kind of stuff.
Just quickly to make the point that Curtis was making, one of the things is I see, please would Michael and Curtis be able to recommend a basic ancient Hebrew language study? And I think what I'm reading there is how to spot the marriage covenant language in the scriptures. And by virtue of us going through this series, you're going to get a lot of it. Already today we saw this language of adorning, right? So today you've learned one thing of adorning, a groom adorning his bride. And we're going to see more of this language throughout the series, quite a bit of it, especially because, and so on a question like that will become answered as we go through the series. But to be able to do an exhaustive version of this, oh boy, as Curtis said, we'd be here for days. What we can do is give the main, there's this language, or look at this, or look at that. Today we only chose 3 passages in the prophets to speak of the divorce and remarriage. There are many more places, many, many, many. But it's let's give the main ones so that you can kind of get the rough idea, and then you'll start seeing it for yourself in your own studies. And so the Hebrew, the marriage language is one of those things. We can show you over the course of the series the main ones, and then you'll start seeing it just through your own studies.
That's right. And also to remember that we'll be revisiting, the Torah as we move forward, and how the prophets saw it and the other prophets, because they were all seeing the same thing from different ways. And we were distinctly using 3 very different type of prophetic servants, that we stand on their shoulders to be able to have this conversation. But they were very different in what they were asked to do and their prophetic understanding and ability. Yet, interestingly enough, they all got back to this, bridal language, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Hosea, very different, but yet still saw a picture the same way. So we'll be referencing and going as we move forward still, looking at these aspects of the prophets as a lamp unto our feet, as we move forward in the Torah. So it's just important that we just cannot address the magnitude of this at any one point. In fact, we're going to have to go right to the end of Sukkot to get anywhere near just putting a basic ground and framework in play. But what it will challenge on all of us is our leaven. It will challenge our traditional thing, our imaginations, our thoughts to date. We've picked up a lot in the house, and this stuff doesn't die easily. Although there is a quote that I'm actually going to use for next week as a result of something on the that got in the chat here, and it's Cornelius Austin has said something in an incredible way here, and I'm actually going to use this next week as I just love it so much, Michael, the way he put it. It's fantastic, and so why not have the community contribute to this? This is truly an amazing, unconditional, but not insequential love story. And, that is just a fantastic quote as to what this is. And so incredible, because the consequence has been here the whole time. But let us not put Elohim in our sovereign choice box and then make his promises based on us. Let's allow his promises to be based on him, and then see what choices we face as a result of that. Anyway, thank you, Cornelius. Your quote will be a part of next week's teaching. It is just fantastically stated, and I wish I had gotten there before you had to do it. It's just so well said. Yeah. So thank you for that.
All right. I've got 2 hands up. Let's go in order on my screen. Zach, you're first on the hit list, mate.
On the hit list.
Zach, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
So you got it all sorted now? You're able just to put into a few words, and we don't have to do the rest of the teaching.
If I had it all sorted, I probably wouldn't be here still.
Like the rest of us.
I think it might just be a question of clarity. It was just regarding the Jeremiah 31, the new covenant that he'll make. Then after those days, he'll write the laws on our hearts and on our minds. Mm-hmm. The statement you made, or at least that I heard you make, was that this is coming in the future yet of this moment.
We are. I know where you're going with this, and we're addressing this. This is a part of next week's teaching. So where we left off, we kind of finished with Jeremiah making a statement relating to something that's going on with this broken betrothal marriage covenant perspective. So the answer is yes and no, sort of in understanding, at the time this was stated, why was it stated this way? What did Jeremiah know and understand? And what was the only way that those words could ever be true? And this is all going to point to Messiah. It's impossible what he wrote without Messiah and his entry into the time domain. And all of this is impossible, and it all points not only to the deity of Messiah, but it also points to he was who he said he was. It's impossible to orchestrate this in just some sort of, because of the historical, prophetic evidence that sits around all of this. He was indeed who he said he was. And this really upset the religious establishment at the time. We're going to talk about this a bit more next week. Let you finish your question, just in the sense of your statement, but I have a sense, not to cut you off, that next week, as we now go from here, this is going to be answered.
Okay, I mean, I wasn't planning on cutting my view of this teaching halfway through it because that would be kind of weird.
Yeah.
So looking forward to next week then. But yeah, I guess maybe it was just in the tense that you phrased it in this teaching. I wondered to what point in time you were pointing to, but if you were pointing, like trying to situate yourself back in the past and wondering what point in time they were pointing to, then I
Yeah.
will I'll hold my peace.
Yeah, he's stating prophecy. There's a great prophecy that he's stating here, and it's either in line with the plan of redemption and the promises of Elohim, or Jeremiah is just speaking a bunch of gibberish. So we either got to throw Jeremiah out as a prophet, or he made a statement that at his time was not yet in play.
No, you sure had some interesting words to say. I'll just say that.
He is a
Yeah.
prophet for a reason. Jeremiah was quite a prophet, and remember, he is addressing a lot of shenanigans in the house too when he makes this statement. So the context of it is very important as well. Yeah, there's warnings going out, but he's also giving, pointing to something greater than even the warnings.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Good question, though, Zach. As usual, this community is ahead of the play. Maybe you and I, Michael, got to learn to keep up.
Well, the thing with this community is that because the vast majority of you are partaking, you are chewing the cud, you're here regularly, like sometimes you may feel like, Curtis, Michael, you've already covered this. Why are you laboring it? Because believe it or not, the majority of our views are people that are not actively engaged. You guys are. You guys and gals are actively engaged, and that's why you're jumping ahead, accurately so. But, a lot of people watching are not in the same position you are. And so we have to speak to those as well, and, there'll be someone hearing something for the first time today, something that you may have heard for the fourth time. Just in
Years
today's
ago.
teaching. Yeah.
You've had years to chew some aspects of this teaching. Others, for the very first time, they're just starting to bite down on it. And so we have to consider those who have been on the journey and also those that Elohim's leading into it. Also, too, we are at the time of the year where every year he says, proclaim my appointed time. So we do have an instruction to honor here too. And that's why he wants us to have the conversation in some way, shape, or form every year in its appointed time. And so we're needing to honor that too.
I've got another hand up. I know that's not Colleen. But
Colleen, Shabbat Shalom.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom.
How are you two doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. It was just a question that we had, but it's unrelated to like the topic of the lesson. So basically, we were just wondering. So at our church, they do like a Enoch type of calendar, but the Sabbath kind of shifts every year. So one year it'll be on a Monday, another year to be Tuesday, another year to be Thursday. So on and so forth. So we were just really wondering, what do you guys advise? Like, because, right, my understanding, my conviction is, right, what I see in Scripture, the 7-day Sabbath, whatnot, of course, right, clearly. That's the thing. I've read Enoch and I was reading more of the literature, but then I don't know, I kind of started questioning more, and I'm not leaning into it as more, but so we're not doing the same because last year our Sabbath was on Sunday. Anyways, the main question is, what do you guys advise, or just should we just follow what they're doing just as far as that's where Yah has us, or should we continue to keep right our understanding of the 7 day Sabbath? But we attend the feast days like with our congregation, we do Sukkot with them. We do the new months with them. It's just the 7 day Sabbath. That's the only time where we don't gather with them on their Sabbath.
I'll answer it maybe not the way you expect, because there's a practical application to this. I'm actually going to not so much go down that road. Funnily enough, your question is kind of tied into today, because we did speak about how the sun, moon, and stars actually do point to his appointed times, of which the weekly Sabbath is one. And we're told how to count the weekly Sabbath. Like, look, for a simple practical thing, 6 days, 7th day, 6 days, 7th day, 6 days. It doesn't tell you that every now and then there's going to be this random shift. And so that's just the simplicity on the practical. But here's what I will say. And we get into this actually, we mentioned this passage next week. Sorry? I think
maybe hit your camera. It'll allow the bandwidth to maybe.
Yeah. Turn your camera off, and then
Okay, I can hear you guys now. I'll turn it off.
Yeah, it'll just help a little bit there. Yeah.
The simplicity of the 7th-day Sabbath is literally 6 days, 7th, 6 days, 7. Nowhere does it say there's going to be a random jiggery pokery where you have to, it's just 6 days, 7. That's the simplicity. But next week, we're going to quote a passage from the book of Daniel, which says that the adversarial position will seek to change. It will seek to change the appointed times and the law, the covenant and the appointed times. The very thing that the enemy will go for is, and it's the appointed times first, funnily enough, then the covenant. And so many of us will understand, coming from a Christian background, how that has occurred. Sabbath being changed to Sunday, and instead of doing Pesach and leavened bread, you've got things like Christmas and Easter. That's the Christian side. There's a Judeo version of that very same principle, which will seek to attack the appointed times. And what I have found with the Judeo side, or the Hebrew root side, is that they will keep Pesach, unleavened bread, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, but they've made it about them and their doctrine, dare I say. Very much like what we read in the book of Hosea. My appointed times, and so the nicest way I can say this, when looking at some of the stuff that goes on in the Hebrew roots and Messianic, is just you're seeing the outcome of the other side of the attack on the appointed times. And I'll just say it plainly. This is how I believe things like lunar Sabbaths have come in, and Enoch calendars and so forth. Like, it is the other side of the equation of the attack on the appointed times in the covenant. Is just that many people that come from a Christian side don't realize that there's Judah, or the other riverbank, has its own version of things to contend with. And so I'm not going to answer, like I said, this is less about the practicality. There is a practicality, what do you do? But something like the Sabbath is the Sabbath, and it's simple. And unfortunately, there's the Messianic Hebrew roots version of Daniel 7. Of it will come after the appointed times. I don't know what you want to say to that, Curtis.
Well, first off, I want to say, go on your journey and investigate and seek these matters, whether to be so. But also know there's a warning that it's coming after you, and that you may seek every wind of doctrine and be blown all over the place. And one of the things you really want to look for is the fruit of this stuff. But one of the things that helped me, at least in my journey, maybe this will help you, because I've gone through all the calendar stuff and these sorts of things. And there's interesting, things that they look at and bring up, and you go through it all. But in the end, it has to weigh with the totality of the word and also his character, the fruit, the understanding of what's going on. And I can tell you there's a lot of movements out there that are, the fruit's not good. And, but one of the things that helped me in all of this, in my journey, although this is many years ago, was revisiting why Daniel made this warning, because for one, it was going to be necessary. And although we've said many a times, there's great truths preserved on the Christian side of the river, great truths preserved on the Judeo side, but there's also a lot of extra stuff. And then there's the stuff in the Hebrew Messianic sort of other space where all manner of stuff has crept in to muddy the waters. So if you can't trust them or them, well, then trust this, right? Here's the thing. The reason why Daniel laid it this way is he points back to the Moed. Understand, this is these mean. You must get back to these. So it anchors us, and it's actually betrothal related. Then he points to the covenant itself. Now, the fourth of the covenant here is to honor the Sabbath. What is interesting in this journey and what's fascinating is that one of the things that's also a part of these instructions is not just to honor, but it's to guard. Your bridegroom, and this is, he's representing something, is not just telling you to guard it because he isn't. He's telling you to guard it because he has. We forget that the adversary answers to Elohim. And the thing you're going to have to contend with is, did Elohim guard the Sabbath? Not whether we do and not and have all our little, ventures into investigating matters. Did he tell us to do something he didn't do himself? This is one thing where we start to question the very character of Elohim. And it's very, very important. Also, we have witnesses of this. Yeshua himself didn't say, and he, on what they thought was the Sabbath, did X, Y, B, and Z. The Testament, the Berith on this, actually says it was the Sabbath. So there was either something guarded that was being honored by Yeshua, or there wasn't. And is it possible that you could guard a 7-day count like Mike was alluding to, regardless of the shenanigans that man would come up to or get up to? There are warnings, huge warnings, that there's going to be all sorts of matters are going to be attacked. But as we'll mention next week, none greater than the appointed times themselves and the actual covenant. It's interesting that the actual divisive matters that we see in the house, mainly, the sacred name movements, mainly the whole calendar divisions and everything we're seeing, are directly attached to the covenant. And I don't believe there's any coincidence in this. I think you have a bridegroom that knows his covenant. He guards it. And don't be discouraged by investigating a matter, but also don't forget the faithfulness of your king. There are certain matters which even Hasatan, he'll attempt to do this, but Elohim's not going to allow him to in its fullness. The bridegroom has preserved some things here. Daniel doesn't say he will successfully change. It says he's going to seek to muddy the waters on these matters. So I'm going to suggest to you that you have an Elohim that's guarded something. He didn't just instruct us to guard it.
And on that, one of the statements I always say is, Yeshua is our pattern. He's the one that demonstrated how to do this. We know what Yeshua did. That's the simplicity. We know historically and categorically, never mind the academia, I'm talking from the Gospels. We know what he did. He worshipped with the people of his day. We know what they did. And that's the simplicity.
Not to turn it into a calendar discussion and
Yeah.
take away your journey and walking with others, but I really want to encourage you with this. It wasn't until I understood the appointed times of the betrothal process and the significance of the Hebrew marriage covenant lens that it started to answer the calendar questions. It actually took all that out of the equation. If you don't have those two things, you will be all over the place. You're not anchored where he asked us to be anchored. Once I was anchored in that, and this, I'm going back, 18 years ago, it started to suddenly lock in the whole waving all over the place because it couldn't stack with all of the word. And this is the sorts of things that why he gave it to us in Torah the way he did. He's not mucking around. He gave the appointed times and the covenant in the Torah. And there are certain things that the adversary may seek to muddy the waters on, but he will not be successfully able to do so, regardless of all the spiritual adultery in the house. There's at some point we're going to have to learn to trust our bridegroom too. And what we're seeing is a lot of shenanigans out there right now where they don't know him, they don't trust him, and they don't want to hear him. And that's actually describing something that we've talked about today.
I would encourage you, the next 2, maybe 3 parts, when you understand the fulfillment of the spring and fall appointed times through a bridal lens, as Curtis says, it actually answers the calendar debate without tackling it. It's just like, when you just see it through the bridal picture lens, you're like, oh, it can only be this.
Yeah.
And so I encourage you to listen to the next 2, maybe 3 parts. There's something very awesome about Yom Teruah. I'll give you that breadcrumb. There's something awesome about that one.
Why does he labor to the point of creating the very classroom in the time domain before even the actors would come in to defile it? Why go to such lengths to list this out in the order he did, the way he did? Because I think he knew we were going to get up to some shenanigans. You would know those shenanigans is called religion. And what we've been participating in, we have an Elohim that's telling you in his word, not Michael and Curtis. So you can shoot the messengers if you want, but that's not going to change the way Elohim words this. He calls it whoredom. That's not our language. It's his. And so we got to contend with this. It's very, very, very important. He set out things in a way that is he changes not. It is only us that go through all these journeys and do all these sorts of things. Yet, what he has concealed and hidden is so much bigger than calendar arguments. It is so much bigger than sacred name arguments. It is so much bigger than the shape of the earth arguments. All this division and stuff you are seeing is killing people spiritually. It is hurting them. Run. They're trying to change these. They're trying to turn them upside down. They're trying to baffle you with academic language and certain hermeneutical understandings of how you should view prophecy according to their latest movements and lenses. What Michael and I are desperately trying to do is get you back to how Yah told us to look at it in his Torah. And do we get to change that? And is it possible Paul was able to warn us through the Kahal at Corinthians, I fear lest you be deceived, as even the God, that you're being led from the simplicity that's found in Messiah, because I believe you're hearing from a man who looked in the mirror in his own repentance, after his own actions, after his own Damascus road, after everything, and realized I was that person. And the reason why he could proclaim that warning is because it had happened to him. And if you think that it can't happen to any of us, but it can happen to the Apostle Paul from the position he was in with the command of the prophets and the Torah at a level that none of us will come close to, nor any of these teachers and movements you're listening to. That man made a warning, because he was speaking about himself as the chief of missing the mark. And he was missing the mark from a level of understanding and command that probably does not exist on the earth today. I suggest we listen to it. We think we're clever. We think we're smarter. We think we're all of these things. So let us keep going on this, getting back to the simplicity that's found in Messiah, getting back to what the Torah is saying. Get just for a second, just park all the noise in our heads, all the understanding we have, and just look and see whether Elohim actually says what he means and means what he says. And is it possible that he's unlocked a way for us to do this and that we can get back to the simplicity of this? In fact, is it possible we're living, as we come to the end of the age, a time when we need to once again revisit these warnings, which we're doing next week in that sense. But on the same token, we do have journeys, and there is testing matters to whether they be soon, all those sorts of things. So don't let you and your bride be discouraged, but just know that we are warned that he's going to deceive the whole earth, and we are the target. And we're not more clever than Paul. We're not more clever than the disciples. We're not more clever than the prophets. We're not more clever than Moshe. We're certainly not more clever than Adam and Eve. And so we just got to be careful that we do this journey. And this is what I had to learn almost 18 years ago, with a real sense of humility and reverence for Elohim. That's all. Let us not get puffed up with what we think we know. Let's just humble ourselves and get back to these sorts of things, and help each other finish the race. So just stay in that place. Just stay in that place while you look at these matters and consider whether they be so. That's all. Just remember where we really are on the spectrum.
Yeah, because so my wife Colleen, she this was, I think, the beginning of, like, around the time of the new year in March, and then, or a couple months before that, she was just talking about, Sabbath, never changed and whatnot. So I started looking into historically, and yeah,
Yeah.
I see the continuity you guys are talking about. I've looked into
Yeah.
it, and Yeshua, they were all keeping the same Sabbath. From Scripture, historically, we have the same Sabbath now. I haven't seen any that there isn't continuity with that. But yeah,
No.
like, I know my church, my pastor's understanding is that, they were keeping Messiah was keeping the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, same Sabbath. But beside that, the only other thing I was thinking was, would you say we should still, like, join together with them for the feasts and whatnot? And then they have a service on the Saturday Sabbath, right? Because they view it like people will always keep the Saturday Sabbath, so they still hold a service for that. So we gather, but
Cool.
I guess that's what I was wanting to. As far as the feast, should
Yeah.
we still gather with him?
Look, we don't know what you're facing, and what you're seeing and what you're navigating. It's not for us to tell you what you can and cannot do in relationship to your question. So we're not going to. But we're just going to encourage you, be led by the Ruach as to whatever decisions you make. And don't put Elohim on the stand. Don't put his Torah on the stand. It's our shenanigans that always needs to be, and it's what needs to be questioned. And just know that. But as you're led and how you're led and where you're going to do those sorts of things, that's a matter of you to your journey and before your king in the Ruach. It's not for us to tell you who you should or shouldn't, but just learn these principles that we're desperately trying to teach. And then the Ruach will show you. He will. He's not a different Ruach for us than he is for you. And I think you're already being shown some things, right? You're already investigating. You're already going, well, wait a minute. It's already happening to you. And that's happened to all of us too, by the way. Like, you're not alone. Not at all. I mean, I know where you are right now, brother. I actually do. I actually know this place, and I lived it too. And so it's okay. And for me to sit there and tell you what to do or judge you for even being in this place would be hypocrisy to no end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're just
No, I
trying to serve
understand.
as best we can. Yeah. And hear our hearts on that, if you know what I mean.
No, yeah, I understand. I appreciate it, because right now I'm not 100% sure which count is the right one. seems like, I mean, historically they kept the lunar calendar in Jerusalem, so I think Messiah, he was probably on the temple, lunar calendar. But do I know exactly what dates they are? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well,
What I
maybe.
will
7 day
encourage you,
Sabbath right now. So
I'll encourage you, because the question, this is where we need fellowship and discipleship. Like the question you're asking is a good question. It's not that we don't want to answer it, but it would be irresponsible of us to answer it in this context. However, if you had a bunch of brothers that you walked with regularly that understood your situation, that understood the intricacies of what you're facing, they would be qualified to speak into your life. Do you see what I mean? So what I'm actually saying is get in discipleship. Go to the Donkey Stable website, see where the Father leads you, because, look, when I was working some of these things out, early in my journey, I had no one. And then I came to a place where I did have brothers, and it saved me a lot of pain and heartache, and it helped me to chew the cud. And so that would actually be my encouragement. It's not that we don't want to answer to your question. It would be irresponsible of us to do so because we don't walk intimately, which is why I say, go check out the stables, get into discipleship, because once you walk with people intimately, they do have the ability, authority, and the wisdom to be able to speak into such a matter such as this.
I will unapologetically finish up with this, though. Just know there's a reason why we do what we do as a community, why we teach, we teach. It has come with decades of seeking, walking through, chewing the cud, having to double question, see, has also come with crushing and fire and paying a great price for certain things. Understand everything that you're seeing is for a reason. It's not that it hasn't been thought through or looked at, and all of these sorts of things in almost nauseating ways. The labor on some of these matters. But just know this, we're not flippant with it, and there's a reason why we do what we do. And the journey's been taken, if that makes sense. It's just what we don't want to do is not only take away from other people's journey, but we don't want to criticize them for even having it. This is a lamp. This is why we started this series with a lamp under our feet. It's very possible, I want to encourage you both, that him answering this question for you is going to be a lamp under your feet. You're going to keep going, and like you've been doing, you're questioning, you're looking and whatnot, and eventually, right? It's a lamp unto our feet. And that's been the journey for us too, So in no way we're going to shoot you or your fellowship or the people that have this understanding or that kind of a thing, and attack that. What we would say is keep walking. Keep the lamp is shining ahead of you so that you take a step. And what Michael's saying is also, too, maybe not do it alone, so that, the two of you are doing it with others. That's all. But we don't attack people for their journeys,
sweet.
Hope that
That
helps.
makes sense. No, it definitely does. It definitely does. So, and sorry, our signal is breaking up a lot, probably because we're driving. So, yeah.
Well, have a blessed rest of your Sabbath, you and your bride.
Amen to that.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
You too. Thank you. Appreciate
Bless
it.
you both. Bless you both.
Okay,
Thank you
shalom.
for shalom,
Shalom.
Timo. Shabbat shalom.
Right. Okay. Brendan.
Michael.
And Gabriel.
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle and Brendan.
Yes, Gabrielle.
Are you both there right now?
Wait, she's over here. Doesn't want to be on camera, so I'm going to or do you want to say hi?
Well, tell her we're saying Shabbat Shalom to her too.
They hear you. Shabbat Shalom to you guys too. It's funny. I'm PS20 and they always are like, I'll get her to say hi, and it's like, anyways, Shabbat Shalom, that teaching was so rich. It was awesome. It just like every slide, my eyes just kept growing and growing. I'm like, wow. But I had such a simple question to ask. And it made me think of my wife and I's journey. where we saw each other, we dated, then we were engaged, and then we had our wedding day. But I'm like, our day when we of engagement started on this point. So my question would be, now you bring up betrothal, what would mark the start of our betrothal with the Father? Now, what would signify that? And then 2, he takes that very seriously. So you'd have to have the written divorce with being even betrothed. So from the Christian riverbank that we came from, it was this theology of once saved, always saved, which I didn't ever quite believe in necessarily. But 2-part question: what would mark the start, the signification of the betrothal now with the Father? And then if you were to be betrothed and you break that, what would maybe that divorce look like currently? If that kind of makes sense. I guess more importantly, what marks betrothal with the Father? Because you see his covenant, the terms of that, and it's like I started with keeping the clean versus the unclean like a year and a half ago, but didn't fully step into the Sabbath, keeping his set apart day, until about 10 months ago when my wife and I stepped in together. So,
you said something really interesting. What happened? Because you're kind of implying that, okay, once you come to a place of spiritual betrothal with the Father, what does divorce look like there? And I actually think that that's still some of the Christian idea of once saved, always saved, or the opposite of that occurring, that you could somehow fall out of it, right? Let me address the first one. When does betrothal begin between us and the Father? I actually believe the pattern was given to us with Mount Sinai. There's a proposal made, there's an acceptance of the proposal, and then that acceptance is ratified, right? There's a ratification through blood and through something being codified. When you look at what we have in the faith, we have, look, all of us had these moments where the Ruach is drawing us, and we're going, hang on a minute, we're waking up, right? We're waking up from our spiritual harlotry and religious slumber, right? And our eyes are being opened. I actually believe that's the proposal being made, okay? And then we go to this place of, oh my goodness, this is all true. Oh my goodness, we've been lied to. Show me more, Father, show me more. I want to see it all. I believe that's the beginnings of acceptance of the proposal. But there comes a point where you put your actions where your words are. And not to say that this is like, you're not in covenant if you don't do these things, but like we've been given things like baptism, like where we actually do something like this, a mikveh, like which is witnessed by many people. Some men decide to get circumcised as part of this physically because of a work that's already happened on the heart. You could argue that, but there's a point in everyone's spiritual journey where you go, okay, I know what I'm hearing. I don't understand it all, but from this day, today, I will serve. I believe that's the point. And then usually we ratify that with, say, baptism or something like that, a mikveh. But there is that moment where it's just you, and you go, okay. Like for me, it's because I wrestled for a year against this walk when my eyes were being open to it. And then one day I was like, okay, Father, you win. I will submit. And that's the day I believe it began, if that makes sense. Not long after, I would go have a mikveh, I would actually seek to be physically circumcised. Those were not the things that made me in covenant, though. That was just an outward expression of what was happening in my heart. But to your second point, can you fall out of that? Oh. Look, we are told that you can trample on the blood and that there is a serious thing but for that to really be true, you need to have had truly tasted of Messiah, as Hebrew says. This is not just, I don't. you having a struggle in the flesh or having a moment in your faith journey does not constitute, the divorce. But we are told that if you've tasted of the heavenly gift and of the wonders of the Son of Elohim, and then you turn from that, there is a serious warning attached to that. And that's like, and so I don't know if that makes sense. But I suspect there's a little bit of that, the opposite of once saved, always saved, affecting that thought process.
Yeah, slightly.
Brandon, just to help you out here, when I was 9 years old, I experienced something written in Revelation around chapter 3, 17-ish. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Those who, they come in. This is where the Christianity got this, accept Jesus into your heart sort of speak, right? At 9 years old, I didn't realize that I was responding to a bridegroom who was allowing me to experience this moment again because of a spiritually adulterous bride and all the things we talked about today, right? I didn't realize that his people were called the house of Israel. I didn't realize I was outside it. All are outside the house, but he's going to restore his house. And now it's not going to be by our blood, by our knowledge, by our deeds, by our things. It's only his blood that brings us back into the house. And we'll talk a little bit more about this next week. All were removed for their spiritual adultery. This is also not understood widely, especially in a lot of the Messianic Hebrew roots movements, and most certainly in modern Judaism. But there's a real picture that's going on here that where we think of saved as, I'm saved, like an insurance policy, so I don't get tortured forever by a God, right? This is what it's been reduced to. It's very childlike. It misrepresents and maligns the character of Messiah. The way Paul outlaid it was justification, sanctification, glorification. In other words, he was relaying it as a lamp unto our feet. You're going to go through this process of restoration back into the house. And these fulfill the great promises we see in Ezekiel, where he had an understanding of these things. One of the things that once you get all of those aspects, yes, I'll use me as an example here so it doesn't point to you. Since I was 9 years old and experienced the moment in Revelation that was mentioned to the church of Laodicea, I may not have known that any of this was bridal language. Did I trample on the blood of Messiah from a 9-year-old until now? Yes. But is his blood on the stand now because of my actions? Or is there now still consequence in the picture? And is there a way to understand, well, what does that consequence look like now? Right? What does that mean? I keep getting this chance to repent, to grow, and all these sorts of things. Do I trample on the blood the way I once did in ignorance? No. Do I want to, whatever aspect I am still trampling on, do I want that out of the house that I may get to this place? Yes, right? His blood is covering this. This is this whole picture, right? It's his love, his blood, his promise, this is what we've got to get. Yet, if we get that, will I want to honor him more or less? I would dare say that you and Gabrielle are seeking to honor him, but is it purely because you want to be obedient, or are you starting to learn to know him? Because you can honor somebody through pure obedience, or you can have that same level of works in love. And this is the thing we are working out right now. And what it will do is slowly let you realize that once saved, always saved, or, both sides of the whole academic discussions of, this gets into Calvinism and Arminianism and all this kind of stuff. And it's just literally everything the scriptures warned about. I'm going to tell you that both of those academic arguments, I believe, are utterly stupid. They're silly, and neither one of them are true if we actually get this picture. But in saying that, we're not stupid for asking the question and seeking the matter out. Does that make sense? So the positions might be doctrinally silly, And we think it's intelligent because we use big academic words around these things. And then we go to universities and study them, or we go to, whatever environments that we might go to. And, it could be, Judeo-Shiva environment to the Christian university environment. We learn all of these things and it all sounds intelligent. But then we get to the basics of me as a 9-year-old. And I want to remind you of that. I didn't know any of this stuff. What I did know is my Messiah was real. And he's been walking with me ever since as a lamp under my feet. Do you see what I mean? And the mercy that's been applied from that day to now has been staggering. And that mercy is reflected by a blood that only he could provide to cover this journey. He's covered your journey and your bride's journey. He's covering everybody's journey on this screen. There's something that's come to attack that process. This love of a bridegroom that he died for us. It's his unconditional love that's restoring this. Have we been invited back into his house as a result? I would say that from the moment you realized that he was real, you've been living the journey with a lamp back into the house, back to the bridegroom. And there are rewards attached to this. There is consequence attached to all of it, as we grow in things. But let us not go down this past that are warned about, because Christianity has its version, Judaism, modern Judaism has its version, and Messianic Hebrews have their version. And so just allow the process to go that way. It's not about this betrothal being, he's done something to restore something. He's renewing, he's refreshing something. And now you're being invited to come back and partake in it. It's not, okay, well, we started honoring this in works this last year, and then we started to do this in works this year, and we started to, do you see what I mean? This is all a process of you learning and understanding of something he's already done. But you're discovering this, and that's why he has to take us back to the tutor at times. This is why we're referencing the Torah, why the problem, we have to do this so that we don't reinvent it. Because if we throw away the foundations of our faith, we will reinvent it 30,000 plus times in Christian denominations. If we don't get back to what the Torah and the prophets are actually saying, we could miss Messiah and reinvent, who he is, and not accept the very thing that actually is doing this. And so you have this one that's thrown away the foundation of their faith, one that's not acknowledging the very giver of it. And so we can end up in these situations. And so this is the journey. It's a deep question, but just know by the time we're done this series, the extent of the love and the mercy that's been given us, I know I have, and I know Michael has. Boy, if we don't appreciate what's been afforded us, I guess only he'll judge. We just do our best to help us get to a place where maybe we can start to learn how to love him back. Not just be the take bride, or not just be I'm the obedient bride but don't love you, but actually, or what you can do for me and be bridezilla and all this kind of stuff. That we can actually be a people that can learn to know him and trust him and to understand this once again. It's his plan. We'll be talking about this right through the end of Sukkot, so don't worry. Maybe that's going to help in this whole thought process too.
Yes, hopefully. It'll be our first Sukkot, so we're thrilled about it. We're really excited. So,
we're going to see you at Sukkot.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So we get to meet you and your bride, even though she won't show her face on screen.
Yeah, she'll show her face in person, though.
Right. That's awesome. Well, we look forward to it, don't we, Michael? We look forward to meeting you and everyone else and seeing everyone. And
yeah. I can't wait.
Thanks for the response, guys.
Thank you for the question.
Deep matters. Deep matters for us all to consider. Wow.
Well, man, I hope the community is appreciating and enjoying us revisiting this topic. I know Curtis and I are, and it really is an honor to be doing this with you all. It really is. And so, yeah, lamp unto our feet. And it seems to be illuminating more and more. Exciting.
And we do appreciate the honor to serve the community this way. And even though many of you may already understand this, please bear with Michael and I as we learn to understand it so that we can get through it too. So you got to help us as well. And so if you've already got it all, then that's great. Be patient with Michael and I because we're learning and growing from trying to serve in this way too.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave you with the blessing. Yah will bless you, and he will guard you. Yah will shine his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. Yah will turn his countenance towards you and grant you shalom. Everyone be blessed. Have a wonderful rest of your Shabbat wherever you are. And we look forward to the next installment of The Lamp Shining Unto Our Feet. Amen.
Shabbat shalom to you all. Have a blessed week.